morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today. I think we're going to have a lot of fun talking about the news, discussing, debating. What say you, Lindsay?
It's a lot on tap, and we're going to disagree probably, but I think we'll find some common ground like yesterday.
I hope so.
First, let's start with what's on your radar.
Happy to get to it. Brace yourselves, Democratic tastemakers have a new communication strategy, new vibe, if you will. It's called, get this, dark woke. And it just received quite a write-up in the New York Times, which cast Representative Jasmine Crockett as the avatar of this new form of expression, feeling, thing, whatever it is. Crockett, viewers might recall, is gaining a reputation as a more combative Democrat, someone who doesn't politely hold her tongue, but indeed fires back using spicy language. Remember when she clashed with Marjorie Taylor Greene in a House committee meeting? Watch this.
I'm just curious, just to better understand your ruling, if someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad-built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Chairman, I make a motion to strike those words.
I don't think that's
Hold on.
part of
I'm trying to find clarification on what
Chairman,
qualifies.
motion to strike those
I had no idea
words.
what you just said.
We're not gonna do this. Look, you guys earlier literally just
Then there was her decision at a Human Rights Campaign Awards dinner to refer to wheelchair-bound Governor Greg Abbott as Governor Hot Wheels.
We in these hot-ass Texas streets, honey. Y'all know we got Governor Hot Wheels down there. Come on now. And the only thing hot about him is that he is a hot-ass mess, honey.
I guess dark woke just means being more insulting. Well, the New York Times is working slightly harder to describe whatever this phenomenon actually is. Here I'm quoting from the Times. As liberals try to get their groove back, some party insiders say Democratic politicians have been encouraged to embrace a new form of combative rhetoric aimed at winning back voters who have responded to President Trump's no-holds-barred version of politics. It's an attempt to step outside the bounds of the political correctness that Republicans have accused Democrats of establishing, and it requires being crass but discerning, rude, but only to a point. The Times correctly notes that the closest actual thing to dark woke was the Dirtbag Left, a network of bro-coded podcasters who were very foul-mouthed, but also very left-leaning and very supportive of Bernie Sanders. They gained prominence when Sanders ran for president, and they often sparred with elite mainstream boosters of Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and progressive identity politics tied to race and gender rather than to class. But the important thing about the Dirtbag Left is that it was authentic. It was tapping into a real frustration with the Democratic Party, that the party was excessively deferential to a horribly misguided elite establishment. The Dirtbag Left fought this establishment in the political front by boosting Sanders, and in the media front by building an alternative media ecosystem that emphasized alternate voices. What happened? Well, on the political front, the establishment crushed poor old Bernie. They rigged the process against him in 2016. Then, as he surged to frontrunner status in 2020, his opponents swiftly consolidated behind Biden to thwart Bernie. The Democratic Party is currently leaderless, and look, it's possible that the party will one day coalesce around his intellectual successor, AOC, but for now, the party has successfully marginalized the political candidate beloved by the Dirtbag Left. Then in terms of the media ecosystem, it's simply the case that many of the alternative platforms built by the dissident left have been conquered by the right. The alternative media is a pathway to many ideologies some consider to be unnatural. Leave a comment if you caught that reference. Can dark woke pick up where the Dirtbag left left off? Well, I am not counting on it. So dark woke, Lindsay, is this a real thing or just the media trying to, I don't know, create this out of thin air?
Well, first I want to shout out to the Star Wars reference.
Oh, you did get it. Oh, I love that.
So can I go in the comments?
Yes. Yeah. Well, no, you shouldn't do that.
Okay, yeah, you told me to stay away. I think, first of all, you have to remember there's an opposite side to this. I want to be fair. There's also dark MAGA. You remember CPAC earlier this year. There were a bunch of people in all black. We saw a chainsaw from Elon Musk. And these are people that are aligned with, undertones of racism, white supremacy. There are bad parts of both parties. So I want to make sure that we're clear about that. But I also don't understand why Democrats would always have to take the moral high ground. Like Trump from the top down is leading this conversation with pettiness. He's running his entire campaign on pettiness. I mean, he called Kamala dumb, like the word dumb. And then Tim Walz called him weird. And we know that this has been the back and forth. And even though it might be childish and something that I'm not a huge fan of, you just can't keep going high. Michelle Obama's going higher and higher, and now, no, let's just go into the ground and meet you there. But what I think is when you have someone's attention and you have all the viral clips and the big moments that you get from being petty and going back and forth with the jabs that Jasmine Crockett trades with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who also makes fun of her eyelashes, then I think you have the attention of your constituents, and that's when you have the opportunity to actually say something real and say the policies. And then Jasmine Crockett can use all this press she's getting to then push on real issues like, hey, is your economy better than was under Biden? Hey, how are you feeling about these tariffs? And this is when you have the attention now that you've garnered, and you should use it in a better way than continuing the jabs and staying dark woke.
Being coarse, gruff, mean, insulting works for Trump. I don't know that it works for everyone else, and that's on both sides. I don't know that it works for Marjorie Taylor Greene, frankly. When I watch her and Jasmine Crockett, sparring with each other in what's supposed to be a committee hearing, it looks to me like the Real Housewives, like reality TV. It's kind of it's kind of
No, I'm not
funny,
accepting that because
but
they're
it's
two
embarrassing
women.
spectacle.
Because they're two women? No, this is the same
Maybe
exact
this
thing
is,
as
this is my sexism.
Yeah, this is
coming
the
out, I guess.
same thing
I'm
as
gonna
Trump.
Have to cop to that.
And I think that it's hilarious.
But it's funny when
you
he does
saw the people in the chamber laughing. Obviously, it's not appropriate, but when you are constantly poked, I think people are tired of Democrats grandstanding, right? So part of that is being phony by pretending like you don't get irritated, you don't get mad, you don't want to say a jab back. And I think that now you can lead with a little bit more authenticity. You don't have to curse and do all the things that people are trying to be phony with. But I believe Jasmine Crockett, a girl from Houston, Texas, is actually just being herself and saying, I'm tired of this nonsense, so I'm just going to call your bluff.
Democrats recognizing that it was a huge mistake to go all in on political correctness, to go all in on enforcement of language, inoffensiveness, the perception that you can't say anything offensive or spicy, or you can't use foul language, that you're going to be canceled on social media and you're never going to get a job and you're going to get kicked out of school, you're always being recorded, and that the enforcers of that are not necessarily Democratic politicians. It wasn't like illegal to have said something offensive, but was progressive, cultural elite tastemakers in the media, on social media, who all belong to the Democratic Party. And so the Democratic Party became synonymous with that sort of thought policing that I think has made the party toxically unpopular among young people, particularly young men, the people who bore the brunt of this. I think that is actually the biggest explanation for why young men of all races have shifted dramatically into the GOP column in this most recent election.
But overall, we are different than our parents, right?
Yeah.
Our parents had a few more rules than you and I.
Yeah.
TV was different back then. You and I might not have had these jobs 20
TV
years
was
ago.
boring as
But that's
F
what I'm saying.
back then.
We're slowly coming out of that. And I think the younger generation is inspirational in that way. And the Democratic Party has the opportunity after losing an election to rebrand and find themselves. And so dark woke is the beginning of that rebranding.
The dark woke
I
rises.
think I think it's like equally. I mean, if Elon Musk can go to CPAC with a chainsaw and nothing's wrong with that, then we should be able to say a quick
Okay, but
jab.
I got to go back. You said earlier, racist elements, and I don't deny that there are extreme racist fringes in both parties. I've been surprised by the level of anti-Semitism in the extremes of both sides. The chainsaw thing is not. There's nothing racist about that.
That's not
tackling
attached to race.
government.
That's attached to the look of it. He wore all black, had the chainsaw.
Oh,
there were
yeah.
people with dark MAGA hats on,
Yeah.
and what that deeper meaning is, like, oh, we're taking it there, right? Even the signal of a chainsaw means that there's nobody who can stop me, right? I'm unstoppable, a little crazy, and that's what I think dark MAGA is. So just know that there's a parallel on both sides to what we're discussing. So don't just criticize dark woke people that are liberals when there's a whole other mirror to that I don't even think is equal.
Yeah. I don't know that I'm even criticizing. I'm just observing and responding and commenting on
You
it.
don't like the way that the New York Times positioned this exploration into a new part of the Democratic Party. But I think they ought to be given the runway to be a little bit rude after all the beatings they've been taking from Republicans that really had no couth.
Fair enough. All right, next up on Rising, Trump issued Zelensky a stern warning: accept peace or it's over. That's up next. President Trump has just about had it when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia conflict. This morning, he blasted Vladimir Putin for raining down strikes on Ukraine, telling him to stop and to get a peace deal done.
Trump issued a warning to Ukrainian President Zelensky: accept peace or keep fighting until you lose your entire country.
Trump took to Truth Social to express his frustration. He was particularly angry at Zelensky, saying Ukraine will not recognize Crimea as part of Russia now. Trump wrote, "This statement is very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama. It is not even a point of discussion. Nobody is asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired?"
Well, here's Trump at the Oval Office yesterday.
I think we have a deal with Russia. We have to get a deal with Zelensky, and I hope that Zelensky, I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky. So far it's been harder, but that's okay. It's all right.
Zelensky said in a statement this week that recognizing the occupation of Crimea is against their constitution and that there's nothing to talk about here.
Trump issued a so-called final offer peace deal earlier in April. Here are some of the bigger takeaways from that. The U.S. will recognize the Crimean Peninsula as Russian territory. That's one. The U.S. pledges to not support Ukraine's NATO entry. Then Ukraine would get a robust security guarantee from European militaries. Russia would then return portions of Kyiv to Ukraine. Ukraine would get post-war rebuilding assistance and access to the Dnieper River. So that's the deal, and frankly, Lindsay, I think it is the best possible deal for Ukraine anyway, so I, like President Trump, hope that both sides come to the table and can agree to it. I don't see how things could possibly get better for Ukraine without a not just current, continued military assistance from the U.S., but actually stepped up military assistance, including boots on the ground. There's no plan. Military advisors for Ukraine and for the U.S. say there is no plan and no ability for Ukraine to actually win this war with Russia and drive them from the country. So all we're talking about, all we're negotiating is how much of their country Ukraine actually gets to hold on to. That's unfortunate. I wish we lived in some magical fantasy land where Russia never did this or Russia could be defeated, but we don't. We have to deal with reality. And in reality, Russia is going to hold on to some of the territory it took, and Ukraine should not be joining NATO, but then they will be defended by their European neighbors, who should, in my view, be responsible for Ukraine's security more than us anyway. It's their backyard. They should have to deal with this. That seems best case scenario to me. Where am I wrong?
So that's the plan. Let Russia keep stolen land.
Well, what's the alternative?
Because Crimea was illegally annexed in 2014, so we're just saying let the dictators win. I think that the U.S. has a moral authority to get involved here, especially because, and yes, look at Biden, was dangling possible NATO entry over Ukraine's head for a while. And so now I think the country's in a precarious position that we have to follow through.
Well, I agree with
not only sending a message that we will stand up to dictators, but also sending a bigger message that you can't just take over other space. Like, so what about the Baltic? What about Baltic nations? Like, Russia can keep on going. Where will they stop? Because obviously they don't respect Trump. I mean, they literally were bombing Ukraine yesterday when he said he had to all caps stop on social media. So, and that didn't change anything. So at the same time, you're going to go to, they're both going to be in Rome this weekend, both Zelensky and the president, for the funeral of the Pope, and Trump's not even willing to have a conversation with him. And I think once we started it as Americans to get involved from the beginning, we should follow through with protecting people that we have this relationship with and have been an ally to us.
We've given them billions and billions and billions of dollars. How have we not followed through? I agree with you that Biden made a huge mistake dangling NATO, just the U.S. in general. The U.S. government, even before Biden, made a huge mistake dangling potential NATO inclusion, which Russia cites as their motivation to attack Ukraine in the first place. Now, I'm not saying we should take what the Russian government says just on face value or what Putin says just on face value, but that was one of their motivations. Look, again, I hear you. In an ideal world, I don't want to give a Russian dictator any ground either. But what is the alternative? You say we stand up to a dictator, but what does that actually mean? That's just rhetoric. Unless we're going to, are you saying we should commit U.S. forces to the defense of Ukraine? That would be the beginning of World War III. That would take, don't we have to declare war on Russia to do that? Do the U.S. people want to declare war on Russia? Do we want an actual confrontation with a nuclear power over
That's not
who
what we were
runs
sold
this.
on the campaign trail. Trump sold the fact that he has great relationships with both Zelensky, and Putin, and that he's going to solve this immediately. And it seems like he's having trouble mostly solving it with the person that's most our ally. And I think it just is a bigger message, a bigger moral message for the entire world that maybe we're not the superpower we think we are, or Trump wasn't who he said he was on the campaign trail. If this is the best he came up with, is like, let the dictator have what they want, pretty much, and then go ahead and keep bombing when we already said please stop. And he said just as earlier this week that Russia was ready to come to the table with a deal. At the same time, you're also bombing Kyiv. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think that that's important to understand how much control Trump actually has in this situation. He sold a dream, and now that dream is completely deferred from what he sold on the campaign trail.
I would say Biden and Harris sold a dream of of supporting Ukraine. They said without end for as long as it would take. Well, there is no level of support from the U.S., sort of actual military involvement, that was going to save Ukraine in the long run from being conquered by Russia. That's not just my weird opinion about the situation. That is the opinion of our military advisors, and that's the opinion of Zelensky's military advisors. There's always these neocon fantasies that we can swoop in and just rearrange global events the way that we want. That is not the case. And again, I ask, what should we do if not compel these two feuding leaders to accept this plan by arguing that they should? And if they're not willing to, then I don't know. I don't want to be involved, and probably Russia's going to conquer all of Ukraine, and that's very regrettable, but what else can be done other than accept this plan?
Well, I think that's why we have high-level positions in government to solve that answer to that question. But what I know for sure,
but I've already solved it. They should adapt that. They should take that plan.
That doesn't work for our closest ally in the situation.
Well,
I think
does getting
democracy
conquered work?
Well, democracy abroad means democracy at home. So I think the bigger meaning is that if we don't stand up and stand alongside Ukraine, there's a larger message that we're sending that basically we are weak and we have allowed them to get this far and go this far and winning. I mean, they're not just taking the beating and nothing's happening. They're fighting back against Russia. And so we're leaving them in the dust at this point and took them this far just to say, listen, let them take this illegally annexed location.
I mean, but hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians and Russians are dying in this conflict, are dying in defense of this country. I want to bring it to an end because I don't think thousands of people dying is a good thing. Just to send a message that we're willing to have this battle out, even though we will eventually lose it, I think that's like a cavalier, approach to life. The whole country's being destroyed.
It's going to be a cavalier approach to the rest of the world if we say, hey, any dictator, you got carte blanche on any area.
It's not carte blanche.
Want.
We are obligated to defend. They're not in NATO.
By...
We are not obligated to defend them. We are obligated to defend countries that are in NATO. And Russia knows that, which is why they're not going to attack a NATO country.
And if Russia keeps moving, the next step will be attacking nearby or a NATO country. And then what? Are we waiting until that happens to then start a war with Russia, or are we going to stop them now and send a message that we're not even going to allow you to get close to a NATO country?
France and Germany and the UK really thought Russia was about to march across Europe like the second coming of Hitler.
Don't be dramatic.
Something.
March across.
Wouldn't they be committing more of their own resources, their own troops to defending Ukraine? Wouldn't they, at the very least, wean themselves off their addiction to Russian energy production if they thought that they were actually in a them-us global struggle with Russia akin to the Nazis or something? I would think they would not be buying energy from them. What seems to me is that this is not an existential effort, that no one is behaving as if it is an existential situation, except maybe Western liberal media. And I don't think what's happening is good. I don't think what Russia is doing is right. I wish it could be prevented, but I have to live in the real world. And to my mind, the only method that is reasonable, that doesn't involve us getting in a larger conflict with Russia, something there's no desire to do, right? Are there people in the streets of America saying we really want a all-out war with a nuclear power? I don't think so. I think the best we can do is something along the lines of the deal that's being discussed.
And I think the best first step that Trump can do is take the time to meet with Zelensky this weekend and stop pretending like he doesn't know that he's going to the Pope's funeral and have a conversation with a man who obviously doesn't think this solution is satisfactory. Just start there.
Well, right. I don't like to, I'm not one who's going to blame Zelensky. There's some of that on the right. I don't think it's obviously his fault that his country was invaded, but his kind of posture that, we will fight them to the last man, that kind of, it's not realistic. his military advisors know it's not realistic. So I would like to see peace, even if it's going to make us unhappy with the condition Ukraine is left in.
And just hope that Russia doesn't carry on.
Well, they're going to carry on if we do nothing. If we don't make a deal, they'll carry on. They'll conquer the whole country. After everyone is dead and all the cities are destroyed.
Right? America's a superpower for a reason. So I don't know.
Well,
we're going to have to leave it there and
all
just
right.
see what happens this weekend.
Tell us what you think. Up next, has the president soured on tariffs? Is he softening his stance on China? More Rising right after this.
145% is very high, and it won't be that high. It's not going to be that high. It got up to that. We were talking about fentanyl, where, various elements built it up to 145. No, it won't be anywhere near that high.
The economic whiplash continues. President Trump indicated Wednesday he may cut tariffs levied against China.
The president met with economic advisors and business leaders this week who warned him that the sky-high 145% tax import will disrupt supply chains and could lead to empty store shelves.
The Wall Street Journal reports the administration is considering plans to cut tariffs as low as 50 to 65%, more than half of what they currently are. The administration added that Trump would need to see action from China before he could lower the tariffs further.
Meantime, the president also seems to be listening to pleas from his advisors to ease his criticism of the Federal Reserve. Yesterday, he contradicted reports that he wanted to fire Federal Reserve Board Chairman Jerome Powell. Take a look.
The press runs away with things. No, I have no intention of firing him. I would like to see him be a little more active in terms of his idea to lower interest rates. This is a perfect time to lower interest rates. If he doesn't, is it the end? No. It's not, but it would be good timing.
So some interesting economic developments. I am, our viewers know, not a fan of tariffs in general, and was pretty horrified, as were the markets, when all of those crushing tariffs got put in place. But it seems like cooler heads have prevailed, and the Trump administration is stepping back from that. And not just reducing the tariffs everywhere else, but even talking to China about getting rid of those. So I think that's a great win for the American people in terms of price being low, and I'm glad that they're hammering these things out. I think it's important to continue to be wary of China as a global rival, as a national security issue. I don't know that all of our most vital, computer chip type stuff needs to be produced in the Chinese sphere, even if that is cheaper, because, what if it comes to conflict? But other than that, engagement is the best strategy, and it's always good to talk to leaders of other countries, even if they're rival countries. So I am mostly pleased by this news, I think.
So I saw a ton of reports last night that China is mocking the U.S. So all over their social media, they are saying chicken, Trump is chicken, he's so scared. Like, they know that he backed out, basically. The two leaders came to a head. Trump kept saying constantly, yes, we're having conversations. She is like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's like a standstill. And I think we're getting mocked globally because of these numbers that kept rising but meant absolutely nothing, as we see. So I think that this whole strategy has been 3 Ds: detrimental, dumb, and disorganized. And I think that that's important because no one knows what's going on. The strategy, like you said, of reducing our dependence on foreign nation is key and paramount and important. But the way that we went about it, no one agrees with, especially in this economy where people are already uncertain and unsure about what's next, but then also can't buy things that range from electric parts, car parts, to hair supplies. And that's what's happening right now.
Well, if they're making fun of Trump on Chinese social media, that's fine. They're not allowed to make fun of Xi Jinping on Chinese social media because the Chinese government is authoritarian and repressive and censors all criticism of its regime.
You're not going to hear me defending the
images
Chinese
of
government.
Winnie the Pooh because he has this idea that Winnie the Pooh looks like him. Have you heard that? It's very funny. That so. The fact that, so I don't know that the social media is, my point being, is characteristic of how the Chinese people feel about anything because they're afraid to speak up, and if they do speak up, they're,
But why did it take this much? Like, CEOs had to come to the White House and say, look at our shelves. This is what our shelves will be if you don't cooperate. I mean, he's been avoiding and basically ignoring business leaders, financial experts, people that have a little bit more knowledge about our global economy than he does, right? He operated during the pandemic. Wasn't that great? Yes, he handed out stimulus checks, but We also know that
I didn't like that either.
Right. So we understand that maybe there are people that are better with the economy, and he needs to listen to them. And so what we see now is somebody who wasn't listening and causing chaos, and then also trying to be the problem solver. What bothers me is that if you cause the drama and then try to be the one to say, "Oh, I figured this out," that's kind of ridiculous, because we were fine and better. Even the stock markets were better a few months ago. So why do all this?
Look, I've said this before. This is my least favorite of basically all Trump's policies. In fact, I consider tariffs to be essentially a progressive or democratic policy. And in fact, Biden did keep in place many of the tariffs that Trump initiated the first time around. So I guess that's my question to you. How are the Democrats supposed to be responding? To me, they've responded in a mixture of ways, mostly by being against them, which again, I think it's correct to be against them. But then, for instance, Governor Gretchen Whitmer of my former home state of Michigan, saying, well, I don't want to come out too hard against them because I think tariffs do have a role. Elizabeth Warren has said tariffs do have a role. To my mind, Democrats don't quite know what to do because some of them like tariff policies. So how are they, and how should they be responding to this?
Well, I think the note is that we're all on the same page, like stepping away from foreign dependence, but the strategy is a mess. And so I think Democrats can say there was a way better way to go about this than Trump's go-to, which is trying to bully people. That's not effective. And so that's why we're here, because he met his match, right?
Well, was reciprocal tariffs really bullying, saying if you're going to tariff us, we're going to tariff you the same?
Well, he went.
Who starts? That's just self-defense.
He got to the point of 145%, and the Chinese government basically said, "We're going to stop here. This is silly." Again, another joke. Like, you're not even being serious with the tariffs, right? And then you're also he treated in the beginning a lot of our actual allies just like they were China, who's not an ally. So, he was taxing them so high and then decided to bring it down temporarily, but is also claiming to have made agreements with all these other nations, and we don't have any of that on paper. And these things take months, but he's saying in a couple weeks it'll all be done. So everything is hearsay. And what I know is that polls came out about how he's doing these first 4 months, and his approval rating right now, and this is Fox giving these polls yesterday, which we know they're fans of his, are saying he's at around 44% for overall job that he's doing, which is some of the lowest since George W. Bush of any recent president in the 4-month term. And so I think people are not happy. That's obvious from people that like him reporting and telling the news.
I'll just say that I don't know why trade negotiations, I heard this as well, reported that this takes months and months and months. I don't know why it should take so long. Here I am negotiating what the trade policy should be. We will have free and unrestricted trade with you. You will have free and unrestricted trade with us. Done. That should be the agreement. There's no details to hammer out. The government will not be involved in you trading. They will be for firms to reach exchanges with firms in other places. I'm a buyer, you're a seller. Let's make it happen, baby. That's the trade policy. Government doesn't have to make it any more complicated than that.
Yeah,
free trade, not managed trade.
And I think that there's nuance there, right? It's easy to say, but then just like Trump, he does a lot of saying, right? It's easy to say, make an announcement, but it's hard to follow through with the plans. And so getting into the nitty gritty and making sure that everything is aligned so both nations are comfortable. I mean, China's not just going to be like, sure, whatever you want to do. Like, that's not even how they lead their country, as you said. Barely can use the internet in the way that they want to.
Have you ever played, because you surprised me earlier by having an awareness of Star Wars, have you ever played the game Settlers of Catan?
No, I've heard of it, though.
It's a really fun trade-based board game. Again, our trade policy can be as simple as this. I have 2 wheat. You have a sheep and a wood.
Oh, gosh.
I will trade my 2 sheep for your wheat and a wood, and I will be able to build a settlement, and you'll be able to build a road or whatever it is, and we both benefit. It doesn't need to be more complicated. They're making it more
complicated. But a better strategy to create an environment where we're dependent on the U.S. much more with a lot of the production and things that we trade other countries for would be to start to create pathways to get to that goal. And that's what we're not doing. We're arguing about why we're buying so much abroad instead of looking at how to bring the manufacturing industry back to Detroit properly. These are just silly arguments when the real issue is create the jobs here, make it affordable for us to buy in our own vicinity. It's all good. And, that's the solution to me. And I think you can't do one without the other.
Up next, raising taxes for the wealthy. Oh my, we will discuss. Stay tuned. Is the GOP on the verge of breaking one of their cardinal rules, increasing taxes? A group of congressional Republicans have been reportedly floating this idea of jacking up taxes on the wealthy, raising that tax rate from 30% to 40%.
The proposal came from White House staffers who had been quietly pushing it. But President Trump initially signaled he might be open to it, but he shut that door quickly, telling reporters Wednesday that an income tax increase would be very disruptive.
Our next guest vehemently opposes increasing any taxes, warning that it will cost the GOP in 2026 and beyond. Joining us now is Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform and the author of The Pledge, a written commitment that every politician is invited to sign, vowing to oppose any tax increase. Thank you for being here, Grover.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
So I think you were quite concerned probably to hear this rumor being floated that a tax increase was being considered. It sounds like President Trump has signaled that will not be the case. Why was anyone in the Republican fold even considering this idea that I think you and I agree is very anathema to the GOP, the most fundamentally anathema to the GOP?
There's always somebody who knows they can get coverage from the establishment left in the newspapers for an idea if it undermines the modern Republican Party. And there are some people who just want to blow up the Republican Party. And most of them are Democrats, but in the White House, they're not missing completely. To give you some idea how central not raising taxes is to the modern
Break out
Republican
the prop.
Party.
We love the props.
We do, right here. This is who runs the House. This is who runs the Senate. This is 1932. Franklin Delano Roosevelt comes in. This yellow line, 1994. 62 years, Republicans won Congress twice, okay? Once under Truman, once under Eisenhower. This is a one-party state. Congress runs the country.
It's Democratic rule. Yeah.
Democratic rule. The presidents can slow things down by vetoing them, but they can't make anything happen. They start wars, they have scandals. That's it. And this line right here is after George Herbert Walker Bush won the election saying, I'll never raise taxes, and then broke his promise and threw away a perfectly good presidency that he'd inherited. In 1994, 96% of Republicans signed the pledge never to raise taxes. Bush had signed the pledge, but he broke it. Other people said, you know what? We're taking it, and we're never, ever, ever breaking it. Since 1994 until today, who's run the House and Senate? 18 years, Republicans have run the House and the Senate. 6 years, 1/3 as often, the Democrats have. Over here, Democrats always. Over here, 3 times more likely the Republicans have it than the Ds. As the party that won't raise taxes, they're competitive. And the Democrats want to go back to here, and you have to be a truly stupid Republican who's paying no attention to the electorate. These guys are, I'm a populist. Well, then this might be a big hint about what's popular. If you're really a populist.
So what's your message to Republicans that think maybe a modest tax increase will actually help reduce deficit? Because that's the whole conversation about what Elon Musk is here for, to reduce our deficit.
Well, you can remember when Reagan was talked into a tax increase for $3 of spending cuts in 1982. The deficit went up. Spending did not go down $3. The spending went up. Taxes went up, but spending went up, not down. Reagan got cheated. You think you're smarter than Reagan? Then Bush came in 8 years later, and he said he was a cheaper date. We'll give you $2 of imaginary Confederate dollars in spending cuts for $1 in real gold tax increases, and he took that deal. Spending went up faster after the deal than before. Not just went up rather than down, went up faster than before. So the idea that raising taxes helps you reduce the deficit is not true. What has happened is when you cut taxes and you have growth, if you can hold spending down, as we did under Clinton, Republicans took control of Congress, didn't let Clinton spend what he wanted to, we actually balanced the budget. We cut the capital gains tax. That was helpful.
Holding spending down does seem to be the difficulty because you and your group have been very successful at getting Republicans to mostly stick to the no raising taxes pledge. That's a promise they've broadly kept. The promise to do something about spending, my eyes roll out of my sockets whenever I hear a Republican say we're going to do anything about spending. It goes up as much and then some under Republicans, right?
Here's the cheerful news. These are the 50 states. In the red states, the Republican states, they are phasing their income taxes down to 0 and first to a flat rate tax. So they're the 8 states, the green states, that have no personal income tax. The yellow states, single rate tax. Easy to cut. You just say we're cutting everybody's taxes. Very difficult to raise. Illinois, run by Democrats, 2/3 supermajorities, they have a constitution that says you can only have one rate. can't have graduated rates. Their tax is under 5%. They're not up with New York and California because even the left-wing Chicago Democrats can't raise taxes if they have to take on everyone at once. So what are the states doing to phase their income taxes down? North Carolina started it, but Louisiana's passed a law to phase their income tax to 0. So has Mississippi. North Carolina's gone down to going down 2.5. Kentucky and West Virginia passed laws to phase down to 0. How? They say we're limiting spending, and when taxes poke up above that, you don't get to spend it. It goes into a permanent tax cut. So by meshing, phasing the income tax down with spending limits, you get both the spending limit and there are 12 states now that are beginning the process of phasing their income tax down to 0. So the states are showing how you do it, and I think that's the best way to explain it to Washington.
How do you explain Nebraska, which is a governor?
Nebraska, okay, yes, Nebraska. There is one state where the Republican governor is trying to raise taxes. He started by saying, I'm going to do like Iowa. Iowa took their personal income tax from 8.6 down to 3.8, cut it in half in 5 years. Their corporate rate from 12 down to 7. Great governor, great legislature. Nebraska's sitting next to it going, we should do that. And then for whatever happened, the governor there is unsuccessfully trying to raise taxes a little bit. I think we'll stop him. But every other Republican governor is cutting taxes, and most of them are either at 0 or going to 0. This is the future of the Republican Party. Where do congressmen come from? State legislators. Where do presidents come from? Governors. 2/3 of all the governors have signed the pledge. There is no future in the Republican Party for somebody who wants to raise taxes. And Trump not only drove a stake through the heart of this a couple of days ago, he did it again yesterday. So he has twice, he said, just to make sure this thing doesn't get off the floor and walk again, he did it again. He said, this is stupid politics. When Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, raised taxes, and he raised taxes on rich people, the top rate was one of the things he raised taxes on. The ad that was used to kill him was from Clinton, and everyone should watch it. And it says, Clinton goes, you know what this guy did? He raised taxes. He's a jerk. He raised taxes. And you know what? He's for cutting taxes on rich people. So he hit him with both. You're a tax increaser, and he still accused him of wanting to cut taxes on rich people, of cutting taxes on rich people. So you can raise taxes all you want all day, and the Democrats will accuse you of not raising taxes on rich people because that's all they've got.
Well, how do you counter the argument to Democrats that tax hikes would help fund popular programs and help reduce inequality? I mean, how do you counter that? There's some things that actually are helped by increasing tax.
Well, if you raise tax rates, I mean, some taxes are more damaging to economic growth than others. If you raise the top rate, if you raise the corporate rate, you actually slow economic growth and you get a bigger deficit, not a smaller deficit. When Reagan cut taxes, marginal tax rates, by 25% across the board, we raised more revenue than was projected. When the corporate income tax under Trump was cut from 35 to 21, they raised about $100 billion more each year from more growth, more wealth being created. So with lower rates on the corporate rate, we actually raised more money than was projected under the old rates. And the same thing with the individual rate, particularly during the Reagan years, the cut was so dramatic. We need to continue on that path of reducing rates to get growth. Growth is the way to reduce the deficit because, among other things, it gets more people working, so few people on welfare. It gets more people working, more people paying taxes, more revenue, less spending. It's the way to go. Anything that damages growth gets you away from reducing the deficit.
And Trump has surrounded himself by so many business people who clearly understand that, Elon Musk type people, the business community really getting behind Trump. On the other hand, there are some people in the administration, some creative thinkers in Republican circles these days who have a, I would say, anti-growth or even degrowth agenda. We see that a little bit with the trade policies that have been recommended by folks like Peter Navarro. Is Trump going to get, I would say, hoodwinked? But there is a strain of this on the right that thinks growth is not the end-all be-all.
Actually, Trump is very serious about economic growth. He speaks to that. He explains that's why he's doing things. He thinks his tariffs will get there to help negotiate to do better. The argument he's making is a pro-growth argument, which is we're going to end up with lower tariffs at the end of the day because of the negotiations. Okay, that needs to be worked through. But on tax rate reduction, on the corporate rate reduction, he has made clear this is about growth, this is about jobs, this is about higher incomes. You want to see how much good was done with his our website, her.org/list. We have a list of 1,200 testimonials from the press where press is reporting new jobs created because of the Trump tax cuts from 8 years ago, more higher pay because of those, and they're from all 50 states. So if you want to find out in your state who is doing a press conference saying, we're hiring more people, we're paying people more because of the tax cuts, atr.org/list is a really good list to remind you of how powerful tax cuts are for growth, jobs, and reducing a deficit.
Grover Norquist, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with
Thank
both of
you.
you guys.
We appreciate it. Up next, RFK Jr. moves to make your favorite candy, popsicles, and even sports drinks more healthy. Stay tuned.
So we've got some big news for candy and cereal lovers. Your favorite go-to treats could be affected by RFK Jr.'s recent Make America Healthy Again announcement. The Health and Human Services Secretary says the FDA will phase out 8 petroleum-based synthetic food dyes by next year. Let's watch.
And I want to commend the food companies for working with us to achieve this agreement or this settlement. And if they want to add petroleum, if they want to eat petroleum, they ought to add it themselves at home. But they shouldn't be feeding it to the rest of us.
These dyes can currently be found in candy, cereals, sports drinks, condiments, yogurt, juices, canned soups, popsicles, and more. FDA regulations previously allowed for the dye, the department saying their role was to assure the color additives are used safely and appropriately. Now, the dyes have long been under scrutiny, and some food activists and watchdog groups have commended this move to get them out of popular products. The Culture War podcast host Tim Pool wrote on X, "I don't think people realize how massive this is. Clean food makes our nation stronger."
Political commentator Brian Krasenstein says, quote, "I fully support banning dangerous food dyes. Agreeing with a few policies doesn't mean you trust Trump to lead the country. It means you're capable of critical thinking, and that's more than we can say of some of his diehard supporters."
What do you think about this, Lindsay?
You know what? Like I mentioned yesterday, I have a 3-year-old. It's hard to decipher what she should be eating and what she shouldn't be eating. That's a task on its own. And I think it's important to understand that if other countries are holding themselves to a high enough standard to not have food dyes that may or may not, according to our FDA, be harmful to our health, why wouldn't the America take that stance? Like, why would we trust the FDA that we know sometimes works with lobbyists and corporations until they have the facts that maybe something causes cancer down the line, and now we're trying to retroactively fix all the mistakes we made? These are things that you're eating every day: yogurt, cereal. I mean, how many of us didn't grow up on that? And I just think it's important to make sure that we're protecting Americans so we can continue to have longevity. As much as we want to have more babies and all these other conversations that the Trump administration is having, we need to also protect these babies.
So I'm going to have an unpopular take. This is going to be one of those where people watching, I know for sure, are going to agree with you more than they agree with me, but that's fine. I say what I think. I think if companies, voluntarily are removing these products based on awareness or activism, or RFK Jr. talking about these issues, and they're going to get them out of their products, that's great. I'm a little concerned about it in terms of a government overreach thing, for the government to say you can't put these products in your food. They are harmful argument. I'm open to the argument that they're harmful. There's maybe some evidence that suggests that, but we hear a lot of studies say a lot of things about what causes cancer, right? It's this so much, this is healthy for you, this is not healthy for you, then it changes. Like when I was growing up, the food pyramid, you remember the food pyramid?
Yes.
We were told to stuff our fat faces with as much bread and cereal as you could possibly find. Now we're all in more of a low carb mode where, if anything, you should do the opposite of that. I worry about trendy government science health advice becoming out of date, and so really the standard should just be, unlike a medicine, where when the FDA is approving a medicine, they're saying, yeah, you ought to take this for if you have whatever the illness is. With a food product, they're not saying you ought to take this or you have to take this. They're saying, we don't know that this is going to kill you, so you can take it. And then it's up to you to decide, right? It's a different threshold. It's on the consumer to decide. For medicine, it's really, no, this is going to be recommended to you by experts. So we're going to be extra convinced it's not harmful to you. The threshold for food products it makes sense to be lower. I don't know that I've been so convinced by the arguments that these things are harmful that they ought to be told they can't put them in their product. And I would look for an alternative means of encouraging healthier eating. For instance, this might not be the case with the dyes, but artificial sweeteners, corn syrup, that kind of stuff. Well, our government subsidizes corn production. If you make the unhealthier alternatives more cost efficient via government intervention, well, for me, that's the easiest thing to get rid of. Stop doing that, and maybe they'll be encouraged to seek out more natural means. So those are my thoughts on the issue. They might not be popular, but that's what they are.
Other countries like the UK will put labeling. You ever been to Starbucks in LA? They have "this may cause cancer," and you're like, "Oh, I don't know if I want the coffee anymore." Like,
right? That's nanny stuff.
I know, but the labeling helps people make a real decision, and that's in the UK. And then in Japan and Australia, they've completely banned a lot of these dyes. So it's just that they're taking a critical look at protecting their citizens. I think America should too. And sometimes, as a busy parent, and if we're talking about like not a mindful person that's choosing their meals or cooking healthy or deciding. I'm talking about protecting a young child and going to the grocery store, doing the best you can, the everyday American getting what they can, these yogurt cereals for their kids. I mean, no one has time to read through all the dyes and see if they want to get that for their kid. Like, you're putting a lot on parents. And so as much as you, I'm sure, don't like government intervention, this is a great time for them to step in. And I think RFK is doing a good job to step in and make these protections mandatory so that maybe the onus is on the companies to do more research if the FDA hasn't fully completed it, to make sure that we're not slowly killing people. I don't want to be dramatic, but if they cause extreme rates of cancer, if we see cancer has elevated in our country, we have to go back to the source of why. And I'm not blaming all the red dyes. I'm just saying it's worth looking into if there's a chance that we could be getting more unhealthy.
Look, I recognize I'm swimming against the current on this one. Yes, the Republicans have come along this way of thinking as RFK Jr. has entered the coalition, but many Democrats still, he was a former Democrat, still do want to do what you're deciding. I think what you're talking about, healthier eating, is important because we do have a chronic health problem in this country, unlike what they face in Europe for a variety of reasons, and one of those reasons could be the poorer quality of our food, and that's
and some of the complaints are then that Republicans complain about having to take care of people that are then, let's say, on government-assisted, health insurance, and they have these chronic illnesses that are available through the SNAP program by buying some of these unhealthy foods. So even when RFK is pointing out that we should make more healthy foods readily available to people that use those programs, I think that that's also going to help overall with the mission of less payment, debt reduction.
Yeah, but this gets into some really tricky philosophical territory that I myself have not always made up my mind on, because you could always argue then, well, because we have a welfare system and we have to pay for the bad health choices that you might make are not just on you, they're on the entire society, because we're going to be paying your medical costs as
the same health
socialized
choices that
and
people
dispersed.
who are not on the system make.
Right. So, if you live very healthy and you don't have health problems because you eat really well and healthy, but you're still paying into a medical system to support people who didn't make as good choices. But then so then we're going to start restricting people's choices because it's a government, because it's a publicly provided health system. Well, then, if we, we have already done this with smoking, right? We've not outright banned cigarettes, but we have made them, we tax the people who use them aggressively.
And it deters you. It deters
and it
people
does
from
deter you,
smoking.
but I don't like that because I'm a
Less
libertarian.
people have cancer due to smoking. I think that that's a good thing. We should all be on the same page with Make America Healthy Again. That's a good thing to stand
I
behind.
don't like the make.
Okay, please, Americans, be healthy.
Suggest.
Again. Oh, my
encourage, help, educate.
Everyone
but
has the right to a snack, but I don't think
everybody
when
has the right
chemicals are
to-
hidden inside of daily foods that are supposed to
I
be
know.
nourishing, especially kids, that's when it's really problematic. And I think that the FDA is too invested in corporate interests.
I know, but this really starts to get on my. It's none of my business what
Laissez-faire
consenting
vibes.
adults put in their own bodies. It's and I'm for legalizing all drugs. I'm for all of that crazy, zany, wacky libertarian stuff because it's just not. You do you, man. That's my
Everyone
deal.
has choices.
All right, it was like something straight out of the West Wing drama series, but this Hollywood-level shouting match was reportedly a real-life White House meltdown. Coming up next. A real-life West Wing shouting match just feet away from the Oval Office, with the president witnessing it. According to Axios, Elon Musk and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent duked it out in the halls of the White House last week.
The cause? The two men clashed over a dispute about the IRS, but quickly it got more personal than that. The two traded barbs, with Bessent slamming Musk over overpromising and under-delivering Doge budget cuts. Musk quickly hit back, labeling Bessent as a Soros agent, that's a quote, and alleging he ran a, quote, failed hedge fund. One witness said it was two billionaire middle-aged men thinking it was WWE in the halls of the West Wing.
The chest-to-chest clash capped off with Elon Musk unfollowing Bessent on X. The White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt writes in a statement, "Well, it's no secret President Trump has put together a team of people who are incredibly passionate about the issues impacting our country."
Meanwhile, Musk is saying he's stepping back from his Doge duties. His announcement comes as Tesla saw a 71% drop in Q1 profits. X users are sounding off about the disagreement. One user writing, quote, "This administration is a D-list reality show. Such an embarrassment."
Entrepreneur Miriam Cooley says Elon is under most of the pressure and scrutiny. He's taking way too much unnecessary heat, and it's not healthy for him. Look, I kind of agree with Caroline Leavitt that they can argue. That's fine. They have disagreements. Trump has put together a team of people who have some real profound disagreements in the hopes that ideological differences make for stronger policy, and they're going to work those out, sometimes in private, sometimes even in public, and that's good for transparency and accountability. And I don't care at all that they yell at each other. I like both Scott Bessent and Elon Musk. Both of them are more proximate to my own ideological leanings. I think it is fair, frankly, of Bessent to say that Musk has overpromised on Doge, and that, in fact, unless these cuts are done via rescission, unless there's congressional action to make them permanent, they could all just vanish. So I think that's a real accusation to make. Elon isn't stepping away because he's suddenly becoming unpopular, though, within the administration. He's stepping away because he had a special government employee status that is about to run out of time. He will still be very, very involved in the Trump administration.
I just find the whole thing to be juvenile. Like you said, if you elect a reality show president, you're going to have a reality show in the office often. I mean, we saw the president arguing in front of the TV cameras with Zelensky. Now we saw Elon Musk arguing with Peter Navarro, calling him a moron. And now we're hearing about this argument with Bessent. But I mean,
I agree that he's a moron.
I think that there are better ways to have conversations, right? And so the Caroline Leavitt "boys will be boys" is not appropriate when grown men are supposed to be running our country, and it's becoming embarrassing even here and abroad. I understand there's going to be disagreements, but there has to be some civility because you are leading from the top down. I also think that, Bessent is in the right because he has a Congress-approved job. Elon Musk gave himself a role. Him and Trump decided to make up a whole department, and he's not going to be dictated to by somebody who just really has a.
Well, that makes it sound like there's something inappropriate about it. He was a special government employee. Doge.
A lot of people don't like Elon Musk.
Well, they're
a lot of
welcome not to
Republicans
like
don't
him,
like
but
what he's doing.
They're welcome not to like him, but he just the Digital Services Act to overhaul the Obamacare website is the legal framework for Doge's existence and what Elon Musk is doing. But there was always a timer on it, and that timer is about out. And I think the best thing I can say about what Elon has done is called attention to the enormous amounts of waste, fraud, and abuse. The spending on foreign projects that are clearly not popular with the American people. That was Trump at his most effective during his State of the Union-esque address, where he was calling out the spending that was uncovered. And how can Democrats even respond to that? Funding just ridiculous research and programs all over the world. But to actually make them go away forever, Congress has to do something. And this is my fundamental problem with the Trump administration so far, is that at this unique opportunity in time where Republicans actually control all three branches of government, and they can even do rescissions to spending without the need to overcome the filibuster, they have an unprecedented, rare opportunity. They may never have it again. They may not have it again for years, to actually make permanent the cuts Elon Musk has identified, and they are not doing it. And that is a tremendous source of frustration for me, someone who wants to do many of the things Elon talks about doing, and perhaps that's what Scott Bessent was frustrated with as well, and why they started yelling at each other. I don't think he's a Soros agent. If anyone's a Soros agent, it's Peter Navarro, but I...
I mean, Elon Musk keeps claiming fraud and not pointing to any specific proof. He keeps under-delivering. He's pointing to how much money we've saved, but not actually showing us. And now we're selling $5 million access to have some type of visa to get into this country. And so we're trying to make up money other ways. So I think he's pivoting. The whole administration is pivoting because these cuts that are also affecting Republican
You mean
voters.
the gold card visa to bring people in? I like that idea.
The same people who don't like immigration and don't want new people.
I don't like it. I don't dislike
They want people to pay
immigration.
$5 million to skip all the steps. I get it.
That's fine with me.
But my point is that there's not a good strategy that's actually proven effective. And I think that's the difference between Bessent and Elon Musk arguing, because you have to prove the fraud, right? You cut all these jobs. Some of them, like somebody I interviewed, was a veteran that voted for Trump that also was part of these job cuts that worked for the federal government. There are several people like that. That was one of many stories. We're talking about tens of thousands of jobs that you want to make permanent. These are people that are not going to vote for Republicans again in the midterms because they're not seeing a better economy. And they also were affected in negative ways by all these choices that Elon Musk specifically
The federal
making,
government is not
someone
a jobs
that they didn't
program.
vote for.
The federal government is not a jobs program.
It's not a jobs program, but even for veterans, it's a way to continue to serve your country after you leave the military. And so even people like that are getting cut. And I don't think it's a jobs program. I think it's time to figure out a strategy towards letting people go rather than giving them a bullet-pointed 5-point list to tell you what they've done this last few days and then firing them.
I am very grateful to veterans and the sacrifice they've made for our country, of course, and we have an obligation to attend to their health needs, their psychological needs. We owe a debt to them, certainly. I don't think a guarantee of a federal job is the right way to help our veterans. And in fact, which unfortunately, there's a tremendous veterans preference in federal hiring that I know from people who work in government is a huge problem, that they cannot hire people, kind of the people who they want for those roles, because the second they open a position, it gets mobbed by veteran applicants that that they just can't get around hiring. This is a massive government efficiency problem. I am for merit. I am not for race-based or gender-based or any other identity-based hiring or admissions in universities or in jobs. In fact, I want to make it illegal. So the idea that the federal government itself gives a status-based preference is, I think, totally anathema. If I was in charge of the government, that would be perhaps the very first thing I would change.
If I was in charge of the government, I would stop people from hiring their friends, like Elon Musk, in a position that no one voted them in for, doing stuff that's detrimental that both parties don't fully agree with. I mean, we can't even come to an agreement about the State Department and USAID. There's people that are actually dying, and I know I don't want to be too dramatic, but because of the decisions of Elon Musk, someone that no one voted for. He didn't have to campaign. He didn't have to get approval for some of the strategies that he's putting forward. The only approval was that President Trump said, yes, friend, have this job. You funded my campaign. Come on, come work for me. And now he's going back to Tesla, where I think he should stay.
All right, should the government get involved in how many children you have? We'll discuss. More Rising right after this. Remember when President Trump was campaigning and said he'd be the fertilization president if elected? Well, now his administration is actually thinking about ways to increase the declining birth rate, per the New York Times.
Here are a couple of proposals that the White House has reportedly heard. So reserve 30% of Fulbright scholarships for applicants with children or who are married. The Fulbright program is a government-backed international academic exchange fellowship. There's also a $5,000 baby bonus to every mother after she delivers, or government funding of menstrual cycle education.
Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told The Times in a statement the president wants America to be a country where all children can safely grow up and achieve the American dream. As a mother myself, I'm proud to work for a president who is taking significant action to leave a better country for the next generation. Trump also said the $5,000 baby bonus proposal sounded like a good idea. Now, many on the right have been sounding the alarm when it comes to the birth rate for quite some time. In response to new CDC data on the declining birth rate, Elon Musk is doing something about the birth rate himself. He wrote on X, low birth rates will end civilization.
Extreme. Meanwhile, journalist Kat Tenbarge wrote on Blue Sky, quote, when conservatives talk about fertility tracking as a way to increase the birth rate, they really don't know what they want women to know when they're able to get pregnant. They want women to stop taking birth control and get pregnant by accident.
Well, I don't know if we don't want people to get pregnant by accident. I don't want that. What are your thoughts on this subject? I'll let you go first.
Well, listen, kids are expensive. So $5,000 because I just had a baby is not going to really change the trajectory of the 18 years that I'm responsible for this individual.
I mean, I'm sure it'll be a nice thing, though.
Yeah, it'll be a nice thing. But
new parents are going to refuse the check.
When you talk about how much a kid costs, I think it's a small dent in the extreme financial undertaking that
You're saying this from personal experience.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
You have a young child.
Yes, I have a 3-year-old. So I think that, there's a lack of comprehensive support. So while some of these programs are idealistic and sometimes offensive, because like one of them said, there's a national medal of motherhood got floated to President Trump, meaning an award for moms with more than 6 kids. I mean, that's like laughable. Like you can have kids if you want to, but also you're getting awarded. So if you don't, then you're getting discouraged. If you don't have kids at all, you can't be a Fulbright scholar, something that most of the esteemed individuals who have creative minds go on to do, and intellectuals, you can't have that opportunity. 30%. I mean, you hate programs like that. People who say that they hate DEI programs and things that have selective, if you're in these categories, you should be anti just going and making mothers and motherhood a stipulation for achieving anything.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
Because these are all choices, right? I think people have to understand that if you're going to ask for more childbirth, you actually have to have comprehensive support to back it up, meaning that you can't cut funding for support of, motherhood-related programs or health programs. And you have to think about the entire spectrum of people that might need this health support and how you're protecting them when they get in vulnerable situations like reliance on the federal government. So what do we do?
So I think I mostly agree with your diagnosis of the problem. We'll probably disagree on how to go about fixing it. Like you, I don't want to do one-off payments or those kind of government incentives. I mean, this is surprise, surprise. I don't want government incentives to do things because I'm not in favor of the government doing things. However, it has become a problem, and part of the decline in the birth rate is how expensive things associated with starting and raising a family have become relative to other things. Like it's not that, a lot of things that have become more affordable over time, right? Consumer electronics have become more affordable. TVs have become more affordable. Our tech is a lot better. That's good. And also, actually, even though there's some people who kind of have like a nostalgia about like the 50s or something, it's generally been the case that houses have gotten bigger. The average family owns more vehicles. There is a real access to wealth that has increased over time. The reason people don't recognize it, or especially liberals don't recognize it, is they live in cities that have become extremely more unaffordable over time. If you go out to the great interior of the country, you can buy a nice house very cheaply.
Yeah.
However, labor-intensive services have become more expensive. So healthcare, as you were saying, childcare is, I think, such a big one. Childcare has become way, way, way too expensive, and that really hampers how many kids or how soon you're going to have a kid, right? So many people, you probably know them too, wait, or delay, even when they intend to have kids, they delay it farther and farther, and then you run out of time to have really big families. I think there's a lot of bad government policy that goes into the cost of those things that I would clear out. For instance, and you may not know this because you're not a DC native, and I've argued in the past with other co-hosts of mine on this point because I always bring it up. Okay. The city of DC, for years, has tried to credential early educators, basically nursery school teachers, require them to have education degrees. You don't need an education degree, in my view, to take care of a toddler. You just have to have a warm heart and compassion. Your grandmother can do it. It can be a part-time job for people at older stages of their life who just want to come back, take care of some babies. That's fine. Don't need to go get a master's in sociology to do that. That is protectionism at its worst, and it raises the cost of finding childcare for everybody. So things like that make me go insane and wrathful and homicidal that governments want to do that.
Well, I think, with a young kid about to go to school, you want all the criteria. When you have a kid, your whole perspective changes. I probably would have repeated what you said, and then you're like, oh no, I want the best for them, right? Everybody thinks their kid should be protected, have like a genius.
If that costs 5 times more.
Mandarin in school. You're like, there's a lot going on. So you have these options, and you want to give your kid the best opportunity. Or else you just have a nanny who will just watch them and be a kind, sweet person. Putting them in school, you kind of want them to make sure that they're learning. So in that point, I would disagree with you. But I also know that during—
It should be a government requirement. Like, why don't I have if there wants to be a fancy school that has, Chinese education or whatever for the wealthiest people in the world, they can do that, but that it should be a requirement that you have to have that is crazy.
A requirement that my
to
kid
me.
is learning. At 4, kids learn. They're not just like wah wah, like the babies that just sit there and don't say anything. They're having full conversations. But let me go back to.
you don't need
but look, more people were having babies during the pandemic, so I think that was an uptick when there were. If you were lucky enough to 1, be alive, and 2, be working, then you were a little more comfortable because there was nothing to do. You could save money, and you might or may not have gotten pregnant. So we know that when there's a decent economy and people are able to navigate and have some space to make decisions, then they may have more children. So how about the Trump administration figure out how to fix the economy rather than throwing on tariffs, telling people who are pushed off student loans you got to pay right now? Like, these are not things that encourage people to have children because, like I told you, kids are very expensive. And so I think that we're deterring people at the same time saying have babies. Like, this $5,000 doesn't mean anything to the person that owes $45,000 in student loans and is going to go into delinquency and get their entire tax refund siphoned in a few months.
Well, too bad for them, because as I said yesterday, they're going to be repaying every dollar of what they borrowed, and they knew, just as anyone else has to. You borrow money, you got to pay it back. I don't know why they're surprised by this.
Well, maybe Trump can loan them the $45,000 to cover their loan to have a baby, and then we'll have all the babies.
Okay. Next up, Michelle Obama finally breaks her silence on why she did decide to skip President Trump's inauguration. Stay with us.
The former First Lady did what most girls do when they don't have a perfect outfit for an event. Just skip it.
In the latest episode of her podcast, IMO, Michelle Obama finally reveals why she missed President Trump's inauguration. Take a look.
Basically trick myself out of it. And it started with not having anything to wear. I mean, I had affirmatively, because I'm always prepared for any funeral, anything. I walk around with the right dress. I travel with clothes just in case something pops off. So I was like, if I'm not going to do this thing, I got to tell my team, I don't even want to have a dress ready.
She further explains her rationale. Let's watch.
While I'm here really trying to own my life and intentionally practice making the choice that was right for me, and it took everything in my power to not do the thing that was right or that was perceived as right, but do the thing that was right for me.
Michelle also addresses how her choice made headlines and garnered outrage.
My decision to skip the inauguration, you know, what people don't realize, or my decision to make choices at the beginning of this year that suited me were met with such ridicule and criticism. Like, people couldn't believe that I was saying no for any other reason, that they had to assume that my marriage was falling apart, you know?
She also skipped President Jimmy Carter's funeral in January. So it sounds like she just didn't want to go. No way, no how. She didn't like Donald Trump. She didn't want to be back in the spotlight in that way. And yeah, she said she was ready. She was dressed to go, but did not, or could have been dressed to go, but was absolutely against the idea of ever going in the first place. So I don't know what else there's to say. She don't want to go. It's her choice. She's not obligated to.
I also think the outrage is interesting because no is a full answer, especially from someone who is not a politician. I don't think we had the same criticism for President Trump when he skipped Biden's inauguration. And if he did, hats off. But I think it's important for people to understand context. Obama didn't skip it. This woman has autonomy, and she played nice, right? She made up "let's go high" when they go low for 8 years. When people were bothering her about her shoulders being out, people were bothering her about everyday appearances.
That's what happens when you're in public life,
right? So she made a choice to stand by her husband for 8 solid years while he was in the public eye every single day. And I think when he's out of it and hasn't been president for years, she has the ability to have the autonomous decision to say, hey, this doesn't work for me, and I'm a whole individual, and I'm good.
I'm not sure people were outraged that she didn't attend. They were more just curious. There were obviously rumors or gossip that it was some dispute that she was having with Barack himself. Those appear to just be rumors. Nothing has come of that. I don't know. It was just more a conspicuous absence. I wasn't mad that she didn't attend. I was just like, what's going on there?
But why didn't people have the same rumors for Trump? Was he getting a divorce when he didn't show up to Trump?
Well, we know why he didn't show up. It's because he thought he was. He thought he won the election.
Like, for women, it's again this double standard. Why did she have to?
Well, because she left a mystery about it. It was mysterious. It was not mysterious why Donald Trump was not attending the Biden inauguration. He claimed the election had been stolen from him by these people, and he was not going to sanction it whatsoever. whatever, right? That would be, if that was her reason, that would have been interesting. If she said, no, actually, Kamala Harris won the election, it's illegitimate, and I'm not going on this basis, that would have been really interesting. But
I think another part that stuck out to me is that she has 2 daughters, as you know, and she said that every decision she makes, she realized affects them deeply. And so she's showing them that if there's something that they really feel strongly about that is not the right decision for them, they should be able to say no. And I think that, especially when you have a daughter looking up to you, you have to show them exactly how you want them to behave rather than telling them. And so they have options in life. She just wants to make that crystal clear.
Does it make it confusing to the kids when it's like, well, daddy's going to this, but I'm not?
Well, it's like, no, because you're marrying an individual, and that's part of a relationship, is that you have to figure out what works for you. Some people would say tradition is amazing, you should be in lockstep, and I get that, especially in the public eye, but it's not like she didn't comb through this. She said, I knew what the quote-unquote right thing to do was, but the right thing for me was different, and so I made that choice. And I think that people of all walks of life are going to have that experience in their life one time or two, where there might be one choice that might be technically on paper right, but the choice that sits better with them, they make. We talked about it yesterday at 60 Minutes with the EP saying the right choice for me is to get out of here right now. Other people that work there probably think it's a terrible idea. They wanted him to continue to lead the ship. So,
yeah, look, it's fine. She's not obligated to be there. Honestly, no one is obligated to be there. Barack Obama didn't have to be there either, although he seemed to be. That was what I think most struck people as interesting, as particularly at the Carter funeral. The footage of him and Trump chatting pretty amicably, actually kind of smiling, laughing at each other.
Best friends.
It's you're right. I'm not saying they're best friends, but it is always striking when you just see all these main characters of our political times discussion are not often all in the same place. You know what I mean? So to see Obama and Trump and Bush always jumps out from behind a corner and makes everybody laugh and smile. And
I didn't really get the seating arrangement though. I think that for me the Jimmy Carter funeral was more like they got the seating organization and she was like, there's no way in the world I'm sitting next to Trump.
Yeah.
Versus,
well, she was out because she was the vice president, so that was the first row, right? Was Biden and Jill, and then Kamala and Doug, and then behind was, I think it was just based in order of presidency. I think that's what it was.
Because wasn't Trump right next to? So shouldn't Biden have been right next to Trump instead of Obama?
Because they were in the first. They were in the first row because they're current.
Okay.
And then behind that was Bush. Oh, it was Trump, Obama, Bush's. Yeah, I think that's what it was. And then behind that was like Clinton and Gore was there.
It's pretty much everybody besides Michelle Obama.
I love arranging seating charts, so I would have been happy to be in charge of it.
Well, I think she sent a message and she made her decision. So I'm glad that she spoke about it. The transparency. If you're gonna have a podcast, you might as well talk about what everybody's been talking about all year.
Well, but maybe there emerges a little criticism. Like, if you don't want to talk about this, fine. If you want to not be in the public eye, fine. But you do want to have a podcast. I don't know.
The podcast is about life and relationships and experiences, not politics. But she's been very vocal that she does not want to be involved in politics in any way. How many calls has there been for her to run for president? She's like, that is not what I want to do. That's what my husband wanted to do.
There's just too many. I'm not calling her out specifically. There's just too many podcasts out there. I say that as someone who participates in about 3 hours of television every single day and has about 18 other video, audio projects. So I am a do as I say, not as I do, but there's a lot of content available for people
there is a
politics. That does it for us today on Rising. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And we will see you some other time. Take care.